When faith turns to ash and hope becomes heresy, what remains of humanity? They whisper those words across the broken worlds of the Imperium, in the ruins where the Aquila once hung. There are planets in the galaxy where the Emperor's light no longer reaches, worlds that were not destroyed but claimed. These are the occupied worlds, the ones where chaos does not simply kill, it rules. And the people, the forgotten civilians of the Imperium, live not in rebellion, but in worship of their conquerors. Imagine a city once loyal, hive spires gilded with imperial eagles, manufactoria churning day and night, sermons of faith echoing through cathedral voxcasters. Then, one day, the warp storms come. The sky fractures into 1,000 screaming colors. The ground bleeds oil and shadow, and the air hums with voices that are not wind. When the storms pass, the banners are different. The eagles are gone, and in their place hangs the mark of chaos, 8-armed, eternal, terrible. The first days under chaos occupation are always the same. Silence. Then screams. Then silence again. The Imperial Guard had fought once. The Arbites were torn apart, the ecclesiarchy burned in their own cathedrals, their psalms turned to gurgles beneath the knives of the possessed. The survivors, men, women, and children, learn quickly that words like Emperor or Imperium are no longer prayers. They are death sentences. Now they live under new gods. Every district of the fallen hive becomes its own cultic kingdom. The air smells of incense and rot. Children wear charms made from human teeth. The priests, if you can still call them that, no longer speak of the Emperor's golden throne, but of the dark god's endless promise. Suffering is freedom, they preach. Mutation is love. And the people, trembling, hungry, broken, they listen, because to resist is to vanish, and to vanish is to be offered up. Food is scarce. The old imperial supply lines are gone. Chaos does not farm, it feasts. Those who cannot work are taken in the night, and the next morning, their flesh reappears in the stew pots of the workers' camps. No one speaks of it. No one dares. They say that if you look too long into your bowl, the meat starts to move. The warp bleeds into the world like a sickness. Machines awaken and whisper prayers to their own reflections. Hab-block walls breathe and pulse like living organs. The sky itself flickers as though reality is a dying lumen globe. Some nights, the stars rearrange themselves into the 8-pointed sigil, and those who see it weep or laugh or claw out their eyes. And through it all, the people endure. Humanity is infinitely adaptable even in damnation. Markets reopen, though the currency is now blood, not thrones. Trade continues, relics for protection, secrets for rations, flesh for power. The clever survive, the faithful die first, and the ones who once whispered, "The Emperor protects," now whisper, "The gods provide." But the gods do not provide mercy. Further down, where the air tastes of sweetness and rot, Slaanesh holds court. The night never ends there. Music, if you can call it that, seeps through the alleys, the sound of pleasure turned into agony. Civilians disappear willingly into the silk tents, seeking escape from hunger, pain, or despair. They never return the same. Their eyes gleam with colors that shouldn't exist. Their laughter carries too long, too shrill, too hungry. In the underhive, where disease walks like a living man, Nurgle's children thrive. They call it mercy, an end to suffering through acceptance. The sick crawl to his shrines, built from rust and bone, begging to be remade. Their bodies swell, blister and burst, yet their smiles never fade. "Grandfather loves us," they whisper as their skin sloughs away. For them, death is not an end. It is a transformation, a gift. And somewhere, unseen and unspoken, Tzeentch's hand moves. Rumors of prophecies ripple through the hive. Strange books appear overnight. Those who read them begin to dream of wings and flame. The administrators of the old Imperium, the scribes, the adepts, the scholars, they become his playthings, their minds rewritten to chant in tongues of logic turned to madness. Plans within plans, lies within truths. Reality itself becomes a maze with no exit. In such a place, morality is not a compass, it's a memory. Civilians learn to survive by becoming something less or something more. Families barter their loved ones for safety. Parents offer their children to the cults, hoping the gods will at least spare their souls. And sometimes, when the warp storm's quiet, when the sky is almost still, they remember how things used to be. The sound of cathedral bells, the sight of sunlight untainted. But that memory fades faster than the echoes of the dead. There are whispers of imperial resistance, pockets of humanity that refuse to kneel. Old soldiers hiding in catacombs, priests who still carry unbroken relics. They meet in silence, in darkness, lighting candles that flicker against the tide of corruption. They say prayers not to be heard by their gods, but to remind themselves that once they were human. But even faith becomes a weapon against them. The gods listen. They always listen. Every act of rebellion is repaid tenfold in blood. The Chaos warlords do not merely crush dissent, they make art from it. One city was turned into a monument of its own defiance, its citizens flayed and posed, their bodies frozen mid-prayer, their faces carved into screams. Above them, in runes of burning flesh, the words read, "Faith is the sweetest meat." And yet in this infernal order there is a strange, horrific peace. No bureaucracy, no quotas, no tithes to the Imperium's machine of war. Only devotion, only worship. Chaos offers freedom, but freedom without purpose, desire without end, change without mercy. It is said that the longer a world remains under chaos, the less it belongs to real space. Its oceans boil into glass. Its forests sing with mouths instead of leaves. Even the seasons forget their order. Time bends, and memory dies. Children grow old overnight. Graves give birth. The soil itself hungers oil, but some still believe. Deep beneath the hive, where the light of the warp does not reach, a mother teaches her child the Emperor's name in whispers. She tells him that he watches, even here, even now. She hides a small aquila, carved from scrap metal, wrapped in cloth to muffle its shine. The child holds it at night and dreams of a sun that does not bleed. They say hope is heresy in the eyes of chaos. But hope, like rot, spreads unseen. The warlords sense it. Their seers speak of rebellion not born of armies, but of hearts. A new contagion, faith. And so, the purges begin anew. Streets run red again. The statues of chaos are fed with living souls. The gods demand spectacle and their servants oblige. Still, the mother hides. Still, the child remembers. And somewhere above, in the orbiting void, a ship emerges from the warp, its hull scorched, its vox dead. No banners, no light. Only the sigil of the Inquisition, barely visible beneath layers of burn and rust. Its augurs scan the planet, detecting a pulse of psychic activity. Faint, irregular, human. The Inquisitor aboard does not speak. He only stares at the world below. A world long lost, long damned. His hand tightens around a rosarius. He knows what must be done. On the planet, the sky begins to scream again. The civilians look up. Some pray, some laugh, some simply close their eyes. They do not know if salvation or extermination is coming. But one thing is certain. Something sacred, long buried in ash and fear, has stirred once more. And the gods are watching. The orbital silence broke not with thunder, but with a whisper of vox distortion. The Inquisitor stood alone on the observation deck, staring at the world below. A planet shrouded in storms of crimson and shadow. His ship, Penance of Veritas drifted like a ghost in orbit, its crew afraid to breathe too loud in the presence of damnation. "Exterminatus?" one officer dared to ask. The Inquisitor said nothing. His eyes traced the swirling clouds. Somewhere beneath them, humanity still clung to life. And that he could not yet destroy. Below, in the ruins of the hive, the air trembled with the sound of prayers, not to chaos, but to something older. The mother and her son knelt before the hidden Aquila. Their voices were soft, fragile things. "The Emperor protects," she whispered. Her son repeated the words, not as belief, but as memory. Outside, the wind carried screams and laughter alike, and the line between the two had long since blurred. Deep in the Manufactoria district, a priest of chaos looked into a mirror that rippled like water. He saw his own reflection smiling back with two mouths. "Faith is returning," the reflection said. "The false god's name is whispered again." The priest's hand trembled. He crushed the mirror into dust, and blood poured from the shards. "Then let us remind them," he hissed. "Remind them who their gods truly are." From the upper atmosphere, fire began to fall. Not orbital bombardment, dropships, gilded black, marked with the sigil of the Inquisition. The civilians did not cheer. They had seen angels descend before, and not all angels bring light. In the spire ruins, a warband of chaos marines stirred. Their armor bore the sigils of the word-bearers, their crimson pauldrons etched with scripture written in flesh. "The Inquisition comes," growled their champion, a giant with eyes like molten iron. "Good, let them preach." Behind him, his men laughed, a sound like metal grinding on bone. When the first inquisitorial strike teams landed, the world seemed to hold its breath. Dust swallowed sound. Shadows moved without light. Through the haze marched stormtroopers, precise, silent, faces hidden behind rebreathers. Their commander, Captain Rienholt, moved like a blade unsheathed. His orders were simple. Locate the psychic disturbance. Purge what must be purged. Save what can be saved, if anything remains. They entered the lower hive first. The corridors were lined with corpses posed like statues, their hands reaching skyward in frozen devotion. Vox chatter died within minutes of contact. The air was thick with whispers, not over the radio, but inside their skulls. "Turn back," one voice said. Another murmured, "Too late." Rian ignored them. He had heard such things before, the echo of the warp clawing for attention. But one whisper made him pause. It was not a voice of madness. It was a child's voice. "Help us," it said. "Please." The stormtroopers pressed deeper. Their Auspex scanners flickered and died. Shadows lengthened against the lumen glow. Then they found it. The hidden chamber. Inside, the mother and her son knelt beside a broken shrine, the Aquila faintly glowing in the dark. "By order of the Inquisition," Rian began, weapon raised. The mother did not move. She looked up, tears carving paths through the dust on her face. "He heard us," she whispered. "He sent you." Rian froze. No heretic spoke with such purity. No creature of chaos could hold a gaze so unbroken. He lowered his weapon slightly. "We thought all faith was gone," she said. "But faith doesn't die. It hides." Above them, in the orbiting ship, the Inquisitor listened through the live feed. For the first time in decades, he felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. He had spent a lifetime burning heresy, purging corruption, cleansing worlds in holy fire. But now, these survivors, were they victims or the last saints of a doomed planet? Elsewhere in the hive, the word-bearers began their sermon. The ground shook as they gathered the cultists, a congregation of thousands. The champion raised his sword, its edge dripping with molten scripture. "They come with their false purity," he bellowed. "They come to steal what the gods have given us, freedom." The crowd roared. Let the Imperium see what faith looks like without chains. The inquisitorial strike teams fought through the mob. Bolter fire lit the dark like lightning, the air filled with screams and hymnals interwoven, faith against faith, madness against order. In the chaos, the lines blurred. Some civilians turned their weapons on both sides. They had seen enough guards to know none were merciful. In the catacombs, the mother and her son were led to the extraction point. Rian watched them closely. He wanted to believe they were pure. He needed to. "What's your name?" he asked the boy. "Lorik," the child said. "And you?" Rian hesitated. "A soldier," he replied. "No one else." But as they reached the upper levels, something stirred beneath the floor. A low hum, rising like a heartbeat. The aquila the boy carried began to vibrate, its metal turning molten hot. The mother screamed. Rian ripped it from the child's hand, but the light didn't fade. It grew. Symbols flared in the air, sigils not of chaos, but not of the Emperor either. Something in between, something new. The Inquisitor saw it from orbit. "Magnify," he ordered. The hollow projection expanded. The symbols burned with impossible geometry, twisting reality. "Not warp, not holy," whispered his psyker aide. A third resonance, something born of both. Rian stared into the light, his mind unraveling between awe and terror. He heard voices, thousands, millions, the cries of the damned, the prayers of the faithful, the laughter of gods, and beneath them all, a single truth that chilled him. This is not salvation. This is awakening. The boy collapsed, his body racked by convulsions. His eyes rolled back, glowing with golden light. "He's coming," he whispered. "He's waking up." Then silence. The light vanished. Only the smell of burned metal remained. On the command deck, alarms flared. "Warp surge detected," shouted a tech priest. "The planet's core is destabilizing. Reality fracture imminent." The Inquisitor's gaze hardened. "It's not the warp," he said. "It's faith." Faith had become a weapon, raw, uncontrolled, unaligned. It had fused with the very essence of the warp, creating something the galaxy had never seen. Belief given form, without direction, without restraint. Below, entire districts began to change. Buildings turned to bone, rivers ran with liquid gold, and the screams of mortals mixed with the chants of seraphic voices. Both Chaos and Imperium forces halted their fire, staring in awe. The world itself seemed to decide it no longer needed masters. In the chaos, the mother wept over her child's still body. "He saw something," she cried. "He saw the Emperor." Rian shook his head. "No one sees him and lives." But in his heart, a sliver of doubt remained. The boy's last words echoed. "He's waking up." The Inquisitor gave the order. "Commence purge protocol. Nothing leaves this planet alive." The officers hesitated. "Even the faithful?" "Especially the faithful," he said. "Faith is the spark. We cannot allow it to spread." The orbital cannons aligned. The sky turned white. On the ground, Rian watched the heavens ignite. "They're burning us," someone screamed. "They're burning the Emperor's chosen." The soldiers hesitated. Then some dropped their weapons. Others turned on their commanders. The purge had become a civil war in minutes. Through the inferno, the word-bearer champion rose again, his armor aflame, his laughter booming over the comms. "Look upon your faith, Imperials," he roared. "It destroys as well as we do." He pointed his blade to the burning sky. "There is no difference between us." Rian gunned him down. But the words stayed. As fire rained, the mother clutched her son's body and looked upward. The clouds parted for a moment, and she saw a figure, vast, radiant beyond comprehension, not the Emperor as depicted in frescoes, but something raw, distant, sorrowful. It turned away. And then the world ended. In orbit, the Inquisitor watched the explosion consume the planet. "Faith purged," a servitor intoned. But the Inquisitor did not answer. His hands trembled. In his mind, he saw what the woman had seen. That same turning figure, that same sorrow. He whispered to himself, voice cracking like a dying flame. "We burn our worlds to save our souls. But what if the fire was never his will?" The ship drifted in silence. Ash scattered into the void. And in that silence, across the Imperium, something stirred. Not a god, not a demon, but something that remembered being human. Its first breath rippled through the warp like the tolling of a bell. Every psyker in the sector screamed. The Astronomicon flickered for the briefest instant. And in that moment, the Emperor's light, or what remained of it, trembled. The Inquisitor fell to his knees, whispering words he had never dared before. "We were wrong." The stars above seemed to listen, and somewhere, far beyond mortal reach, a voice, neither divine nor damned, answered softly, "No, you were blind." Then all was still. The galaxy waited. The galaxy mourned in silence, though no one dared to call it mourning. The ashes of the burned world drifted through the void, scattering like dust across the warp's invisible tides. Yet something unseen traveled with them, an echo, a tremor in faith itself. Planets far from the purge began to dream of burning skies. Priests woke screaming the name of a child they had never known. Psychers convulsed mid-communion, their voices uniting in a single phrase. He was awake. The Inquisitor's ship sailed through the void in utter darkness. No astropath dared to reach the Astronomicon. Its light flickered like a dying candle. In the quiet sanctum, the Inquisitor knelt before the shrine of the Emperor. His reflection stared back from the golden icon, fractured by the cracks in his own faith. "If this is heresy," he whispered, "then faith itself is the crime." The silence answered him with the sound of a distant heartbeat. It came not from the shrine, but from somewhere deep within the ship's hull, rhythmic, slow, alive. In the lower decks, crew members began to change, not into monsters, into believers. They carved symbols into the bulkheads, not of chaos, but something resembling the imperial aquila, distorted, incomplete, its wings uneven. They whispered prayers that did not match any known scripture. They called it the Second Light. On Cadia's ruins, among the drifting shards of rock that still orbited the Eye of Terror, an ancient listening post detected the pulse. Tech priests analyzed it, calling it psychic interference. But one of them, Magos Virel, found a pattern. Within the frequency of the pulse was a human voice repeating over and over, "He forgave us." The ecclesiarchy denounced it instantly as heresy. But the message spread faster than censorship could contain. Vox channels whispered it, guardsmen heard it in their sleep, entire convents began reciting it without knowing why. The idea infected the faithful like a blessing wrapped in a curse, and where faith spreads, war follows. On the shrine world of Seraphis 9, pilgrims turned on their confessors, demanding answers the priests could not give. "If he forgave us," they said, "why do we still burn?" The response came in gunfire. Blood stained the marble steps of the cathedrals, and statues of saints cracked beneath the weight of their own silence. Above the chaos, one preacher refused to flee. Father Halbrecht was old, older than the wars he had survived. His voice shook as he climbed the pulpit, overlooking the riot. "You want truth?" he roared. "Then hear it. The Emperor does not forgive. He endures. He suffers because he must." But even as he spoke, he felt something cold behind his words, a whisper that asked, "And if suffering was never his choice?" That night, Halbrecht's chapel burned, but when the smoke cleared, the altar remained, untouched, still glowing faintly with gold light. On its surface, carved by some unseen hand, were new words. "Endurance is not divinity. The Adeptus Ministorum panicked. Faith was fracturing faster than any heresy they had ever purged. Some worlds doubled down in fanaticism, executing anyone who dared question the creed. Others fell silent, their churches empty, their candles unlit. And then there were the ones who followed the second light. They built altars not to the Emperor's power, but to his regret. The Inquisitor, now hunted by his own order, journeyed toward holy terror. The warp storms were relentless, but his ship moved as if guided by unseen hands. Every night he dreamed of the child, Lorik, standing at the foot of the golden throne, whispering secrets into the Emperor's ear. On the ship's 13th day adrift, the Geller field flickered. A vision burst across the decks, not demonic, but divine in its horror. Crew members saw the Emperor not as a god, but as a corpse of fire and pain, chained by his own worshippers. His mouth moved, but no words came, only the sound of countless prayers binding him tighter with every syllable. When the vision faded, half the crew were dead. The survivors fell to their knees, not in praise, but in pity. "We are killing him," one of them wept. "Every prayer is a chain." Meanwhile, across the segmentum solar, psychic storms spread like infection. Astropaths began hearing confessions in their minds, the thoughts of the dying, the guilt of the faithful. Even Astartes' chapters, unyielding in their devotion, began to fracture. On Baal, a blood angel named Seraphiel received a vision during meditation. He saw Sanguinius not as a martyr, but as a man begging his father to rest. "You were never meant to bear eternity," the angel said. When Seraphiel awoke, he found his armor weeping blood. On Macragge, an ultramarine chaplain preached to his company that the Emperor's silence was proof not of divinity, but of abandonment. For that sermon, he was executed. His blood, however, flowed in the shape of an 8-pointed star that quickly dissolved, leaving behind only a single human handprint. The Mechanicus found their own heresy in data. Binary prayers once believed to reach the Omnissiah began receiving responses. Not commands, not demands, apologies. "We made him what he is," the data stream said, and he remembers. By the 5th month, the Astronomicon dimmed again. Not extinguished, dimmed, pulsing as if breathing. Navigators reported seeing figures within its light. Not saints, not demons, but ordinary humans walking through the radiance, carrying torches. Each flame they bore resembled the old Emperor's symbol, fractured yet alive. And then came the miracle no one could explain. On Terra itself, within the sanctum of the Golden Throne, the Adeptus Custodes felt the temperature drop. One of the throne's golden panels cracked for the first time in 10,000 years. A whisper escaped, faint but unmistakable. "Stop praying, stop." The High Lords dismissed it as malfunction, but the Custodes knew better. They did not speak of it, not even among themselves. One of them, Valerian, stood before the throne that night, staring into the blinding light that hid the Emperor's form. He saw for the briefest moment a single tear of molten gold run down the side of his skeletal face. Meanwhile, the Inquisitor's ship reached the Sol system. The Imperial Navy demanded identification. He gave none. "The truth travels with me," he said. "Open your eyes, or die blind." They fired upon him, but the shots never struck. They dissolved in the void, scattering into sparks. The penance of Veritas descended toward Terra like a falling star. As it entered atmosphere, the psychers on the planet screamed. The pulse had returned, stronger, clearer, no longer a whisper but a voice that filled every cathedral, every vox, every mind. It spoke one sentence, calm and sorrowful. "The Golden Throne was never meant to save me." Across the Imperium, the faithful wept. Some fell to their knees in worship, others tore their eyes out in despair. Entire planets ceased function as their populations froze, listening to the impossible. In the catacombs beneath the ecclesiarchal palace, the Inquisitor emerged from the wreck of his ship. His armor burned, his face unrecognizable beneath scars of light. Yet he walked, drawn by something no mortal command could deny. The custodes barred his way until the throne itself trembled, and a voice within said, "Let him come." He stood before the Emperor, a god in agony, a man unmade by worship. The Inquisitor fell to his knees. "My lord," he whispered, "I burned worlds in your name. I silenced truth to preserve faith. Tell me I was right." The air shimmered. The Emperor's voice, weak but infinite, filled the chamber. "You were necessary." Tears filled the Inquisitor's eyes. "Then all of this, the death, the ruin, and it was your will?" "No." The word shattered the room like thunder. It was theirs. The Inquisitor's mind buckled. He saw visions, not of demons or angels, but of humanity itself. Billions praying, believing, demanding. Each prayer became a chain of light, binding the Emperor's soul to the throne. The god they worshipped was not a deity of his own making, but a prison forged by their fear. "You wanted to be saved," the Emperor said, "so you made me eternal, and eternity is pain." Outside, the Astronomicon flared brighter than ever before, but not gold. It turned white, pure and blinding. Warp storms recoiled. Demons screamed. For the first time in 10 millennia, the Emperor moved. The custodes fell to one knee as the throne cracked open. Dust fell like stardust from its golden frame. The Inquisitor watched as a hand, frail yet radiant, lifted from the fire. "End it," the Emperor whispered. "End my worship and set me free." The Inquisitor hesitated. "If you fall, humanity falls." The Emperor's voice was no longer pleading. It was resolute. "No, if I remain, humanity never rises." And then, silence. The Astronomicon flickered once more. The light dimmed, but it did not die. It changed. In its center burned not one flame, but many, thousands, spreading outward like stars. Every one of them burned with human will, unchained from dogma. Every one of them whispered the same vow: "We will walk without gods." The Inquisitor fell to the ground, weeping. Above him, the Emperor's form dissolved into light, scattering into the Imperium like embers caught on the wind. Across the galaxy, demons howled. The Chaos Gods stirred in fury and fear. Their thrones trembled. For a new power had entered the void, not faith in gods, but faith in humanity itself. And somewhere among the ashes of the galaxy, a child's voice echoed again. "He's free now." The stars flickered. The warp went silent. And for the first time since the dawn of the Imperium, the Emperor of mankind was gone. Smoke hung over the world like a shroud, curling through the shattered spires of what was once a holy city. The air carried the taste of metal and prayers burnt to ash. Bells no longer rang here, only the echo of artillery, the distant hum of warp storms whispering above the clouds. The people had stopped counting days. They no longer asked who ruled, only who survived. A procession moved through the ruins, a line of refugees clutching icons of the Emperor carved from scavenged bone. A priest led them, his voice raw from chanting litanies that no longer carried meaning. Each word sounded hollow, as though the faith itself recoiled from this world. Children stared with eyes too old for their faces, seeing visions they could not describe. The soldiers that guarded them were broken men, once Imperial Guard, now wearing patchwork armor marked with faded sigils. They followed orders out of habit, not belief. In their eyes lived the quiet madness of men who had seen gods bleed and angels scream. One of them, Sergeant Kyle, carried a rosarius on a chain of rusted shell casings. He touched it when the wind howled, whispering apologies to the Emperor. When night fell, the stars above shimmered like open wounds. Voices bled through the dark, carried by the warp. They called out to the desperate, promising warmth where the Imperium offered only silence. Some listened. Some followed. Kyle did neither. He only watched the horizon, where flashes of light marked the slow death of cities. On the third night, the priest vanished. In his place, the refugees found a symbol drawn in blood across the altar, a twisting spiral, impossible to look at for long. Kyle knew it at once. It was the mark of the Changer, the one who offered knowledge for souls. He burned the altar, though the fire gave no warmth. The refugees wept, but not for the priest. They wept because deep down they felt something watching through the flames. High above, the fortress cathedral of St. Dravian still stood, though its walls were cracked and its saints defaced. Within its halls, the planetary governor sat before a hollow display showing 1,000 dying sectors. His advisors whispered of surrender, of negotiation with the invaders. He ignored them all. His eyes lingered on a small relic beside him, a glass vial holding a drop of the Emperor's blood, or so it was said. He clutched it as if salvation could be sealed in glass. An Inquisitor arrived without warning. Her name was Lyra Vex. Her armor bore the sigil of the Ordo Hereticus, though its silver was dulled by soot. She had come not to save the world, but to cleanse it. Her gaze lingered on the governor like a blade about to strike. "Faith has fractured here," she said. "We are no longer fighting men, but ideas. And ideas burn slower than flesh." In the catacombs below, chaos worshippers prepared their offerings. They were not monsters in form, but people, workers, scholars, even former guardsmen. They whispered to unseen masters, not out of hate, but hunger. Hunger for meaning in a galaxy that had long forgotten them. Their leader, a woman once known as Sister Helene, stood before them wearing tattered robes of an ecclesiarch. Her face was serene. "The Emperor's light," she said softly, "is only one star among many, and even stars die." Outside, the war deepened. The sky split open, revealing shapes that should not exist. Demons poured through fractures in reality, their laughter blending with the screams of dying men. The air itself became faith turned inside out. Yet even as the world broke, the Imperium fought on. They always did. Kale's unit was sent to defend the last cathedral gate. They numbered fewer than 50, facing an army of thousands. When the bombardment began, they did not pray for victory, only for remembrance. Kale knelt before the shattered altar, whispering a final confession to a god he was no longer sure could hear. "If you are there," he said, "forgive me for believing." In the storm that followed, reality bled. The cathedral walls wept light. The corpses of the faithful rose, not in mockery, but in desperate worship. They formed lines beside the living, their eyes burning with pale devotion. Kyle watched them march into the fire, and for a heartbeat, he thought he saw the Emperor among them, a figure of pure radiance walking barefoot through ruin. But when he blinked, there was only dust. Lyra Vex descended into the lower vaults, drawn by a psychic resonance pulsing through stone. She found Sister Helene there, standing before a portal of living metal. The air rippled with voices, each one offering truth. Lyra raised her pistol but hesitated. "Why?" she demanded. Helene smiled gently. "Because the Emperor was never a god. He was a man, and men die." Lyra fired. The bolt round tore through Helene's chest, yet the woman did not fall. She stepped closer, blood glowing like molten gold. "You think you cleanse corruption," she whispered, "but you only prune the roots. The tree grows still." Her words twisted in the air, seeding doubt in the Inquisitor's heart. Above them, the battle reached its crescendo. The governor activated the planetary defense grid, a desperate act that unleashed nuclear fire across his own cities. Millions died in seconds. The sky became a burning wound, and in that light, the last remnants of faith burned away. Kale watched the horizon turn white. The cathedral trembled. The dead fell silent. For a moment, there was peace, pure, blinding peace. Then came the echo of something ancient stirring beneath the ruins. It was not a voice, nor a presence, but the weight of memory itself. Lyra stumbled as the ground cracked open. The portal in the vault pulsed once, then shattered. From within emerged not demons, but light, a radiant shape, fragmented and human. It looked at her with sorrow, and she knew without knowing how, that it remembered her. "He forgave you long ago," it said, its voice like a dying star. Then it was gone. Silence fell across the world. The fires dimmed. The refugees found only ashes where their cathedral had stood. Kyle survived, though his faith did not. He wandered the wastes, guided by dreams of golden light and burning wings. Each night, he whispered the same question into the dark. "If the Emperor still lives, why does he not weep for us?" In the void above, an Imperial fleet arrived weeks too late. The world was declared lost. Its name struck from the archives, its memory purged, but some records remained. Reports spoke of lights in the ruins, of voices chanting in the wind. They called it heresy. They called it madness. But those who listened closely swore they heard something else beneath the static, something breathing, waiting. And in the heart of the dead planet, beneath mountains of glass and bone, a new cathedral began to rise. It was not built for the Emperor. It was built for something that remembered him differently, something patient, merciful, and terribly alive. The storm had not ended. It had only changed its face. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath, as if it, too, feared what came next. Ash fell like snow upon the dead world. The new cathedral stood half-born amid the ruin, its spires twisted, its stones carved from the bones of the fallen. It rose not through labor, but through will, a living monument to something neither holy nor profane, breathing through the cracks of faith. Those who survived the cleansing now gathered at its base, drawn by whispers older than scripture. They did not know if they sought redemption or damnation, only that something was calling. Kyle walked among them, his armor reduced to rags, his rosarius melted into slag. He felt no hunger, no pain, only the echo of duty that would not die. The Emperor's name lingered on his tongue like rust. Around him the air pulsed with unseen hearts. He looked upon the cathedral and felt the war move within him again, not of guns or demons, but of faith against truth. Above, the sky bled. Imperial ships broke orbit, their hulls blackened by fire. They had come not to reclaim, but to erase. Inquisitor Lyra Vex stood upon the command bridge of the Saint Audientia, her reflection trembling in the glass. Her eyes were hollow. The words of Sister Helene still lived in her thoughts, whispering doubt through every prayer. "Purge the surface," the Admiral said, voice trembling, "before it spreads." Lyra's silence was her only answer. On the surface, the people began to sing. It was not a hymn of the ecclesiarchy, but something new, soft, uncertain, and unbearably human. Their voices carried through the smoke, weaving into the storm clouds like threads of mourning. Kyle listened, and for the first time in years he did not feel alone. He turned toward the cathedral, its doors wide open, golden light spilling out like spilled blood. Inside, the air shimmered with life. The relics of the old faith lay scattered, icons broken, scriptures half-burned. Upon the altar, a shape knelt. It was neither angel nor demon, but something in between, its form shifting like reflection upon water. It looked up as Kale entered, and for a moment he saw himself within its face, wounded, weary, but alive. "You still seek him," it said. Its voice was both gentle and terrible. "But he is not where you look." Kael's hand trembled upon his weapon. "What are you?" "I am what was left behind," it answered, "when belief became law, when devotion turned to chains." Its eyes burned with impossible sorrow. The Emperor's dream was not empire, it was understanding. But men feared silence, so they filled it with worship. The words felt like a blade drawn through his soul. He saw flashes, ancient wars, the rise of the Imperium, the burning of worlds in his name. And through it all, one truth lingered. The Emperor had never asked to be a god. Humanity had made him one to survive the dark. Above, the bombardment began. The first lances of fire struck the planet, shaking the heavens. The cathedral trembled, but did not fall. Its walls absorbed the flame, glowing brighter, as if feeding on destruction. The creature's form wavered. "They come to bury the past," it said softly. "But the past has already risen." Lyra's ship hovered in low orbit, its cannons primed. She stood alone in the chapel deck, staring at a small vial, the relic once kept by the governor. The supposed blood of the Emperor. She had tested it in secret. It was not divine. It was human. Ordinary. And that truth broke something in her. She walked to the command dais. "Cease fire," she said. The officers turned, pale with disbelief. "That's heresy," one whispered. "The world is lost." Lyra's gaze burned through him. So were we. Her hand trembled over the firing runes. She could end it now, erase all trace of what she had seen, of what she had become. But her faith, fractured though it was, would not let her. She looked toward the burning world below and saw for the first time something worth saving that was not carved from obedience. Kael approached the altar. The creature reached out a hand of light. "The Emperor's light was never meant to blind," it said, "only to guide." The ceiling began to collapse, dust falling like divine snow. Kael's choice came to him then, faith in what he was told, or faith in what he felt. He dropped his weapon. The bombardment intensified. Whole continents cracked, oceans boiled. Yet amid annihilation, the cathedral remained, its glow piercing the clouds. Lyra watched from orbit as the planet flared beneath her, a dying world defying death itself, the scanners filled with static. Then, through the interference, a signal emerged, Kael's voice, broken but clear. "If he still watches, let him see us as we are, not as saints, not as monsters, just as men who tried." Lyra closed her eyes. Tears carved lines through the soot on her cheeks. She turned to the Admiral. "Pull us back." The man stared at her as if she had gone mad. "That's a direct refusal of Exterminator's protocol." She smiled, bitter and hollow, then recorded it as faith. The ship withdrew. Below, the final barrage ceased. Silence descended, vast and fragile. The planet smoldered, but the cathedral stood untouched, a wound of light against the void. Inside its broken heart, Kael knelt. The creature was gone. Only warmth remained, like the last breath of a dying sun. He looked upon the faces of the survivors gathered around him, farmers, soldiers, children, and realized something sacred had happened. Not salvation, not victory, but memory. The memory of what the Imperium was supposed to be before it drowned in its own devotion. He whispered a prayer, not to the Emperor, but to the man he once was. In the heavens, Lyra's ship drifted among the ashes. She recorded her final entry. "The Emperor's truth is not in doctrine or flame. It is in the will to endure, even when the gods fall silent. I have seen a world burn and still believe." She paused, looking down upon the glowing cathedral. Maybe faith was never meant to be pure. Maybe it was meant to be human. Her voice faded. The data logs would be sealed, buried in archives no one would ever open. But some truths refused to stay dead. Years passed. The planet was forgotten by decree, erased from star maps, its name forbidden. Yet traders whispered of a light in the void, where prayers were answered not by angels, but by echoes of men who remembered hope. They said the cathedral still stood, and at its heart knelt a statue carved in the image of a soldier with eyes of stone, watching the dawn that never came. And sometimes, when the storms of the warp passed close, captains swore they heard a voice carried through the static, a voice that spoke not of gods or empire, but of forgiveness. The Imperium marched on, as it always did. Planets burned, faith hardened, the galaxy turned beneath the indifferent stars. Yet something had shifted, a tremor, deep and eternal, in the soul of mankind. In the quiet that followed the fire, there was no triumph, no prophecy fulfilled, only the hum of creation rebuilding itself from ruin. The Emperor's light flickered in distant minds, not as a god's command, but as a memory of something gentler, a dream of unity, lost and rediscovered in the ashes. And somewhere, beyond the edge of recorded space, a single candle burned in the dark. Its flame defied the void, trembling but unyielding, a reminder that even in the age of gods and monsters, humanity endures. Not because it is holy, but because it remembers. They say the light still burns there, not the cruel brilliance of a dying star or the holy blaze of a saint's martyrdom, but something quieter, something that breathes, a pulse in the dark, steady and patient, waiting for the galaxy to remember what it once was before belief devoured truth. The world below is little more than a grave now, its surface scorched into glass and memory. Yet the cathedral remains. Its towers, broken and half sunk into the ashen plains, stand like fingers reaching toward a forgotten sky. Inside, dust drifts through frozen beams of light, and silence reigns as the final liturgy. Those who come here do not come as pilgrims, for there is no faith left to offer. They come as witnesses, traders, deserters, the lost and the damned, each drawn by whispers of warmth in a galaxy that has forgotten the meaning of mercy. They kneel before the statue at the heart of the ruin, its stone face weathered and indistinct, its eyes hollow but kind. Some claim the statue once moved, others say it wept, but all agree that in its presence the air feels less cruel. As if the Emperor himself, in some hidden corner of eternity, still listens. The wind outside carries the remnants of hymns warped by time. The words are lost, yet the melody persists, a low hum like the heartbeat of a dying god. The sky above is heavy with dust, a veil drawn over the scars of war. Nothing grows here, yet the land hums faintly beneath the ash, as though life waits beneath the ruin, patient as stone. Inquisitor Lyra Vex's name has long since faded from record. Her ship was found drifting years later, silent and cold, the crew entombed in prayer. No wounds, no struggle, only peace, as if death had arrived as a benediction. The last entry in her Vox recorder was a whisper, nearly lost in static. He was never gone. We just stopped listening. The data was sealed, marked excommunicate traitoris, and hidden beneath vaults of bureaucracy. But the words endured. They always do. Kyle's fate became legend. Some say he died in the fire, others claim he walks the wastes still, a shadow among the ruins, his eyes alight with the reflection of a golden throne that no longer shines. The refugees who once followed him built small shrines of bone and steel, offerings to no god in particular. They spoke his name in reverence, not as a hero, but as a man who chose compassion over obedience. And in that choice, perhaps, something divine was reborn. The Imperium never returned. The Administratum erased the coordinates. The Ecclesiarchy declared the world cleansed. Yet from time to time, Imperial ships passing near the sector report strange transmissions. Voices carried through the void, singing in languages older than the Emperor's dream. Tech priests dismiss it as radiation echo, but some captains swear they've seen the glow, faint gold-white, pulsing where no star should be. Among the silent stars, there are those who still keep record. The remembrancers, the chroniclers of ruin. They write not for the high lords or the saints, but for the forgotten, for those crushed beneath the weight of history's perfection. In the archives of lost worlds, one such record survives. It begins simply. Here lies a world that remembered what it meant to feel. The writer speaks of the cathedral's light, how it flickers through the void like a dying ember refusing extinction. He writes of soldiers who laid down their guns not in surrender, but in understanding. Of an inquisitor who saw humanity not as sin, but as miracle. Of a god who was once a man, and whose greatest power was not immortality, but the dream that mankind could rise beyond fear. He ends with a question, though no one knows to whom it was addressed. If faith can survive without gods, can gods survive without faith? The galaxy does not answer. It never does. Yet in the stillness between stars, something stirs, quiet as breath, vast as grief. Perhaps the Emperor dreams still, though not upon his golden throne. Perhaps he walks among the dust of the worlds he could not save, listening to the whispers of mortals who learned to hope without him. The ruins fade with time. The bones of the cathedral crumble, swallowed by sand and silence. The statue at its heart stands until the end, its surface smoothed by centuries of wind, its features lost entirely. And yet, the feeling remains, the sense that here, once, humanity remembered its soul. Far away, aboard an ancient pilgrim ship, a child recites an old prayer. The words are wrong, the names forgotten, but the rhythm is pure. Her mother listens, smiling faintly, though she does not know why. In the hum of the ship's engines, the child's voice carries like a spark through the void. Light in the dark, she whispers, warmth in the endless cold. The stars seem to listen. For one fleeting moment, their light softens. The void breathes. The song continues, and somewhere, deep in the uncharted dark, the faint outline of a world shimmers. A ghost wrapped in gold, its towers long fallen, its people long gone. But its story endures, written in the silence between prayers. Because stories are what remain when faith has burned itself away. Because even in the far future, where there is only war, there is still memory. And memory, perhaps, is the last mercy left to mankind. So if you hear the hum in the static between stars, listen closely. It is not a machine. It is not a god. It is us, our echo, our grief, our hope. The song of humanity, small and defiant, refusing to die. And as the galaxy turns, unending, indifferent, one truth lingers. That the light was never his alone. It was ours. It always was. If this story moved you, if you felt the weight of its silence and the spark within its darkness, then like, share, and subscribe. For even in the grim darkness of the far future, every echo, every voice, every remembrance matters. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and let your words carry across the void.